What's up guys, CJ here. Welcome back to another deck tech video. Today I want to talk about the deck that I think is going to define the meta. I think this is the new Druid and I think it's going to be kind of a problem, but you can build it, you can beat it if you build around it, but first we should talk about what this is. Now I don't mean specifically my deck, although this one has been doing really well. I would say in the first month or two of Gothic, I had a record of something close to like 30 wins, 4 losses, and those are against some pretty decent players. Now I've started to lose a little bit more because people are building against it, and people like and Kyle, they can kick anyone's butt. So it's definitely a deck that can be beaten. But I think in a open meta where people don't really know what to expect, this is the deck that I would take to any tournament and expect to win. Blue Magic 1 is the one I'm using in the Tournament of Champions. It is it's got me to top 32 so far. I'm waiting for my next opponent who's probably going to be Moth, so we'll see how it goes. Blue Magic 2 over here is just the updated version because you can't update decks during the Tournament of Champions. So I'm just the only change I've made is River Rapids because I realized that this card is absolutely busted. So we're going to talk about all these things in just about a second. Okay, first things I want to mention was, sorry I've been gone for so long. I know Gothic came out, I made a couple of videos and I disappeared. I got sick, I got the flu, and then when I started to recover from the flu, I got a bacterial pneumonia, was taken down from that, had to take some antibiotics, started to get better, worked like 2 80-hour work weeks in a row, and then had to switch on to night shifts. So I basically got my butt kicked for a solid month now, but I'm feeling better. You can still kind of hear the gravel in my voice. I'm not 100%, but I'm mostly there now, so we're pretty good. And the other thing I wanted to mention is you guys should join us over at the Summit. Currently, we are playing a tournament with ELO. ELO, if you guys don't know it, is like a ranking system that is variable based on how strong your opponent is. If you play a guy who's never played before, you'll win a small amount of points and go up higher in the rankings. If you beat somebody who's at number 1, like Kyle, you'll go way up and he'll go way down. So it's a variable ranking system. If you think about kind of like League of Legends, Magic the Gathering, online, or chess, all those things use something similar to this. So it's been a lot of fun. We're going through February 3rd is when the open play will end, and we'll move to a top cut. And you guys can just come over and play. The tournament is already locked in as far as who's already involved, but you're welcome to play anyway. See how your decks compare to the best players in the world and see how your ELO stacks up. I like to joke that we have the best players in the world over at the Summit, but like we actually do. The leaderboard right now is nothing but tournament winners and a couple people who, if they haven't won tournaments, they are good enough to do so, and it's really cool. So come over to the Sorcerer Summit, join us, have fun. It's free to play whenever you guys want. Now, let's get to the deck. Blue Magic 2, baby. So the first thing to kind of address here is that it's Necromancer, and I think Necromancer is the new Druid. We knew that Tawny was incredibly powerful because you got this free token every turn that you could do fun things with, attack with, or use a mobile spellcaster. This isn't free, and it is not a spellcaster, and it has a little bit of drawbacks. It's not airborne, those sorts of things. But Necromancer creating 1 skeleton token every turn is actually insane. And it allows you to do more abusive things than even Tawny was letting you do, at least in the right decks. So creating small amounts of tokens, yes, you can swarm them and win with a bunch of 1/1 attackers, but that's not really what my deck is designed to do. My deck is designed to use those tokens to gain value with things like Gothic Manuscript. If for the first 3 turns you make a 1/1 with 1 mana, and then on turn 3 you make a 1/1 and play the Gothic Manuscript, you're drawing 2 cards, and on the 3rd turn you can start to draw a card every extra turn just with your skeleton tokens. We got the Temple of Malak, which is a fire site. You'll note I have no fire spells in here. This just means that you can go up on mana 1 or 2 every turn. If you have a turn 1 Temple of Malak, make a skeleton token, turn 2 Deep Sea, you can get a turn 2 Lugbug Cat. Or it gets better from there. The other thing about this, having it on your home site, or at least the site that your avatar is on, is that you're always up 1 mana. You can make a skeleton for 1, sacrifice it for 2, and you're a net positive 1 mana. So Temple of Malak is kind of gross. We've got the other gross site, which is Gilman House. You can turn any number of skeletons you want, as long as you have 4 water threshold, into any number of hybrids that you have in your collection. I will oftentimes just sack 3 skeletons, turn them into 3 hybrids, and then I'll be able to go in for 9 the next turn for 0 mana investment. I guess 3 mana if you count how much it took to make the skeletons. That's as many as you want, and it's 0 mana to do. So it's kind of nuts. You can also turn your opponent's stuff into the hybrids. They'll retain control of it, but like if they have a green knight that's just wrecking you, you can just be like, fine, whatever, free, turn your guy into a horrible hybrid instead. We got Symmetric Suffering, which is one of the only ways you can kill the Doom of Dilmun. It also gets around Ward, and if they're not making a bunch of tokens, then sacrificing a skeleton token for Symmetric Suffering, which says sacrifice up to 1 minion, artifact, and aura, your opponent must sacrifice the same. So getting rid of their 3/3 with Ward or 4/4 with Ward for the cost of a skeleton token in this card is actually insane. And I think, Dormant Monstrosity and the Gnarled Wendigo are ways that I've had more than 15 power out on turn 4 spread across 3 to 5 bodies consistently in this deck. It's actually insane. So we'll kind of go through it, but that's what I'm trying to tell you is the value you get from Necromancer is so much more powerful than just making 1/1 bodies and attacking with them. You can sacrifice those minions to gain additional value. And I think water is in the best place it has ever been. And I think it's the strongest color in this set. So that's why I think mono water is the way to go. I do think that technically this deck would be better as water air. And you'll see that I'm running a bunch of air sites just because my collection is mostly air cards. But I never run into threshold issues, and I'm able to run more hate sites like Mismanaged Mortuary and Garden of Eden because I don't have to worry about threshold. I think if you were less worried about hating on certain decks that your opponents are playing, you could run a few more air sites and make this list even better by running also air. I think that Meat Hook is phenomenal, but I think Grapple Shot is just better. So let's start from the top and see what we got with this deck. So first of all, Atlantean Fate, it's busted. We want to use this in any water deck because it can take away threshold, it can stop their defensive sites, it can submerge their minions. Most of their minions aren't going to have submerge. It's an incredibly powerful card. You don't really need me to explain why. Necromancer, we kind of already talked about. The fact that you can just generate tokens every turn lets you abuse sacrifice mechanics and things like Dormant Monstrosity, just having minions nearby to the void. It's actually insane. Then they're also sacrificial fodder for attacking into people's wards, and they're very powerful against minions that are just bigger than you. You just be like, okay, great, I'll throw a token into you, and then I'll hit you with my 3/3 against your 4/4, and we'll trade up. So I love the ability to make an extra value every turn, and that's what Necromancer does. Ring of Morrigan, I think has gotten worse in Gothic than it was in Arthurian Legends, but I still think that because you've got token strategies and you've got ward strategies, it's worth playing. The fact that you can just, whenever you cast a spell, kill their warded minion, or sorry, kill their ward is very powerful. It's very helpful. I still think it's worth running. It's definitely not as good as it used to be because things like Displace and the swaps, Lord of Greed, etc. I think it's a little bit more dangerous to play these days. And because water is so powerful, swap is even more in the meta now than it was at the end of Arthurian Legends. And water was everywhere then. So I think that this is a risky move, but because of how powerful it is against powerful strategies like Savior and like Necromancer, I think it's worth running. Necrotic Manuscript we kind of already talked about. I don't run this in most decks, but I do, and I didn't even really run it in Druid because 1 extra card per turn, but it was every other turn because Tawny would have Summoning Sickness. I didn't love it. But the fact that I'm making Necromancer tokens every turn, if I'm lucky and I get my Gnarled Wendigo out, then I'd rather have that, and I'll just sacrifice those guys and not worry about the Necrotic Manuscript until later. But if I'm unlucky and I usually make a skeleton token on my first 2 to 3 turns, if I draw Necrotic Manuscript, I've drawn 3 cards. Even if they dispel my Necrotic Manuscript or play something that's going to stop me from making tokens, I've just drawn 3 for 2 mana, plus my incidental mana from the first couple of turns. This is insane. It's also very powerful when you've got things like the Plague of Frogs. You can just draw 7 and win the game, etc. So I think the Necrotic Manuscript is worth running in Necromancer. Mono Water has a harder time closing out the game. So late game, you're just dropping a token and using your Necrotic Manuscript to draw 1 extra card per turn, and that might be enough to find your toolbox to win the game before they do. So I like this a lot. Toolbox is very powerful. We all know that it's very powerful. I like it specifically because, again, it's hard for me to end the game. Having Zap in my collection means I can just win the game on the spot with that. You'll see, again, I am running something like 7 air sites. I'm not sure. We can look at it in a minute, but I'm running a number of air sites, which is why a lot of my sideboard is air. Getting a Grapple Shot just ends the game. Murder of Crows is incredibly powerful. Riptide can always be useful in a deck like this. Drown is just a removal spell. So I like Toolbox. I run 2 because I couldn't find enough space for 3. I think it's probably worth running 3. I have double Omphalos because I'm mono water. That's another advantage of me running mono water instead of air water. They're small advantages. When I don't draw an Omphalos, then I wish I had air. But the fact that both of these are water spellcasters means that apart from my 8 artifacts here, they can cast anything in my deck except Dormant Monstrosity. They don't give you the ability to cast those minions to their site. They just say they must be cast there, and Dormant Monstrosity says it must be cast to a corner void. So the Omphalos is if you draw a Dormant Monstrosity, they're useless and you can't cast them. Similar things to if your opponent puts them on top of their sites, you have no longer got the ability to cast your minions. So that's a good way to get rid of Omphaloses, but these things are amazing. I know not everyone is as high on these as they should be, but these drawing you an extra card is absolutely insane. The fact that they are 4 mana, do nothing the turn you play them is quite brutal. But water is so good at stalling out the game and getting 2-for-1s already, as I'll go through many times through this deck list. That's not a big deal, and I think that anytime I get an Omphalos, I'm happy. Except for when I have Garden of Eden, and even when I have Garden of Eden, I know I'm running Necrotic Manuscript and Omphaloses. How is that a good idea against Garden of Eden? Just try to play your Garden of Eden just after you've gotten 1 or 2 cards from your Omphalos, and you've already gotten 2 net card advantage, and you win the game that way. Or I'll Necrotic Manuscript, Plague of Frogs, draw 7, Garden of Eden. We're no longer drawing cards, but I'm up 7. If that doesn't work out that way, then I do run a lot of expensive spells, and I'll just draw a site for turn every turn and get my spells off of the Omphalos, and it's still pretty worth it. Meat Hook is because I can't run Grapple Shot. Yes, there is rare instances where this is better than Grapple Shot, but most of the time this means your minion gets to get a one-time Pudge Butcher activation, bring them to your side and attack them, hit them for 1, or hit them for their power, whereas Grapple Shot is usually hit them for double their power, right? You grapple into them, deal the damage, then you tap and attack and deal the damage again. And this is a fight ability, so Grapple Shot, I can have my vampire remove your vampire. This would mean my vampire fights your vampire and mine would die. So it is worse than Grapple Shot in most instances, but the truth is, I don't run that many air sites because I want to run more hate, and I want to run double Omphalos, and I want to run these other things. I think in an open meta where you have no idea what you're going to be against, it might be better to go water air. But I like the mono water because I play against a bunch of guys who are Archimago experts, and I don't feel like losing to Archimago. So I run a bunch of Archimago hate, and so if I run into that, then I win with this deck. But Meat Hook is very bad. The non-bow here is that you can't cast it off of Omphalos. The good thing is a lot of my minions are slow, right? If my Dormant Monstrosity comes in behind, or my what are they called? Gnarled Wendigo comes in on my back sides and then can't attack for the next turn. If I'm able to bring you to my side and start beating you down, or Lord of Lies, oh my God, hit you for 12, no problem with this Meat Hook. It can be very powerful to bring you onto my back row and start beating you up. I also used to run more of the Elder Ruins. I think I'm down to 2 now, and I might even cut them because I haven't had to cast a Shogoth in forever. The games are grindy, but they're not this grindy. But being able to Meat Hook an enemy back to your back row on top of your Shogoth that you cast last turn and then attacking up is very powerful. So it's another reason that Meat Hook's actually kind of decent, but it's not perfect. Speaking of my slow minions, like my Shogoths and my Dormant Monstrosities and my Wendigo, Polar Explorers and Ruler of Thule are basically my back doors. They're my ways to get onto their back row, ignore their defensive sites, and just start pushing damage quickly. So I find that Polar Explorers are worth running in this just because I have big fatties and I want to run them out, not on curve, but when I have my Dormant Monstrosity in the back row and they're ready to start hitting for 6. I think they're incredible. I know it's just an S tier card that I can't imagine not putting in a water deck. I actually don't think there's a single water deck I wouldn't put this in. If you think about it, it's a 3 mana, 3 power, so like already even. Okay, fine. And then at the end of your turn, she can take a step to your to the back rows, either yours or your opponent's, depending on where she is, and gain stealth. Which means that there's never going to be a time that your opponent can actually target Ina with any spells or attacks that she's not stealthed. Basically ever for the rest of the game, unless they're running like Watchtowers, Babbling Brooks, etc., right? Stealth mechanic or silence mechanics. So she just gets to deal 3 damage every other turn for the rest of the game. And sometimes when she comes back to your back row, you untap with her, you remove their 2 power minion or 3 power minion with a trinket. So you're actually using her on the off turn, and then she goes back to their back row and she gains stealth again. She's incredible. I still will trade her out. I don't protect her like she's the most important deck card in my deck, because she's not. But she's incredibly powerful. I always get in for multiple points of damage with her, and then I usually trade her for a minion or trade up with her for a minion or something like that. I think she's worth running in every water deck. Koi Nixie, I've been singing the praises of for forever, and now that we have Thin Ice, this is actually broken. It's not fair. It's such card advantage. It's insane. Koi Nixie can pull minions towards you. Once per turn, Koi Nixie may force a target nearby enemy to take a step towards her, tap that enemy if it's untapped. So just tapping it is an incredible ability, means you can push damage. Pulling minions towards you does, because they're forcing them to take a step. This is confusing in the rulebook, and I'll go over this with another video at some point. But basically, taking a step and a step are 2 different things in the rulebook. A step is a unit of measurement which goes by adjacency. Taking a step allows you to use movement abilities, such as Airborne, which means diagonal. So Koi Nixie and Thin Ice, which says whenever there's at the end of your turn specifically, if minions atop the site have 5 power or more, submerge them all. So the point is that Koi Nixie, if you can get this as like your second site or third site, the Thin Ice, and then you start pulling minions onto it with Koi Nixie counts as 2 power. All you need is any 3 power minion on top of that site with Koi Nixie, submerges them both. Koi Nixie has submerged, the opponent's minion presumably does not, and you get to kill all their minions basically for free. It's insane. It's like Avatar of Air at home. And I love it. And the fact that you're Necromancer, so even if you pull their 2 power minion in, you can then walk a skeleton token on there. You're sacrificing a skeleton token for basically nothing. The insane thing is, because Koi Nixie has submerged, basically she goes down underwater. The next turn she can walk up, pull a minion, submerge again at the end of turn. So she's protected from any spells that would want to remove her. Koi Nixie's biggest problem was she would walk up from underneath water, kill their minion, and then they would like kobolds her, violin her, hot wheel her, magic missiles her, kill her. Because at the end of the turn, she gets submerged by this mechanic, she's basically immune to damage. And this is one of the most dangerous things about mono water right now is Koi Nixie Thin Ice. It gets you so many cards. I was playing a game against somebody the other day, and their cemetery had 5 cards in it, and my cemetery had 1 card in it. It was like Symmetric Suffering. And I was just getting insane value out of Koi Nixie because they were playing aggro, and I was just removing all their minions at the end of the turn. It's phenomenal, and I think this is like an S tier card now. I thought it was before, but now it really is. Lugbugcat is just like a good beater. This deck has a lot of expensive minions and a lot of synergy pieces, and if you don't draw all the synergy pieces, then it kind of flounders a little bit. But again, the record is very strong, especially when people aren't prepping specifically against mono water. But this is one of those ways that you survive early turns if you don't draw one of your multiple defensive sites. Order of the Sacred Oak is nuts, and I think that it is a mandatory 3 of in almost every deck. If the meta shakes out that Site Destruction is not worth it, it's still good card. Still a good card, but Site Destruction is popular. I run into plenty of it because, again, some things like Koi Nixie and Thin Ice are so powerful. You need a way to interact with sites. And Order of the Sacred Oak, this says you can't destroy my sites. So I've seen Site Destruction Pathfinders, and I've seen how brutal they can be, and this just turns their plan off. So I think they're very powerful. The base is a 3 mana, 3 power with Ward, which is incredibly powerful in a deck that wants to go to the mid to late game and win with basically better creatures and spells than they have access to. And a 3 mana, 3 power with Ward that you're playing defensively and not really getting in for damage. Sometimes I do, but you're playing it defensively means that when you're pooping out skeletons that are attacking you, you can just attack them on your turn for 4 damage or 5 damage or 6 damage and trade up, and all you're doing is breaking your Ward. I love this card and I will always play it, and I think it's phenomenal. Abaddon Succubus is great. It is a 3 power, which I actually had forgotten about. I thought it was 2 power, and I was like a little bit lower on this card. It is so good. Incidental life gain is very powerful. Again, my deck is going to win in the long run. It has an inevitability to it because it's so powerful as far as the value of every minion. Again, I think Water has some of the best minions in the game right now. And the fact that I just get to poop out powerful minions every turn, plus get tokens, plus sacrifice those tokens for extra value every turn just means in a fair game where we're each drawing 1 card per turn, I'm on average winning. Abaddon Succubus is helping force movement, so maybe I can pull you onto my site, gain 2 life, use Koi Nixie to bring you over to a Thin Ice, and then kill you that way. Is incredibly powerful. She's a must-answer threat, I think, and they oftentimes will remove her after she gets 1 or 2 activations, but she's a must-answer threat, and my deck is full of must-answer threats, so eventually they're going to run out of answers, and you just kind of win that way. Failed Mutation, I think people are a little bit lower on than they should be. Yes, it's a 4 mana, 4 power that doesn't really have any special abilities when it comes down, but the fact that it can't be targeted or damaged by magic allows you to A, overcommit, and B, it's so annoying. They oftentimes will have to trade their valuable minions like their Ino in order to get rid of this thing, because you can't swap it, infiltrate it, you can't poison Nova it, you can't hit it with Arcane Barrage. It actually absorbs the Arcane Barrage damage, so like line of sight being blocked by this guy is absolutely insane. I love these things. I think some people probably have them as like B tier. I have them at least at A tier. They're so powerful. I never feel bad having a failed mutation. Mimic is interesting. It's one of those cards like Dispel that when you draw it and you don't need it, it feels kind of bad, but I actually like it because it allows me to overcommit in a way that doesn't just lose to things like Ring of Morrigan. I love having a Mimic in hand because it means I can also use my Swap for something different. Swap is so powerful. As we all know, it's like the first S tier card of Water. And it can just, well, not the first, I'm like, fine. But it's an S tier card in Water, and the fact that I don't have to hold my Swap in case they draw their Ring of Morrigan means that I can use my Swap for offensive and defensive abilities, like putting them onto the Thin Ice, etc. Mimic it's a 4 mana, 2 power. As you summon this Mimic, you may transform a carryable artifact into it under your control. So you can cast it to their site as their Ring of Morrigan, and it's a 4 mana, 2 power with charge, basically, because their ring came in the prior turn. People are also oftentimes placing their toolbox out on curve, because toolbox is very powerful, but it's not broken like Ring of Morrigan is. So if you're swapping for my toolbox, I'm like, that's no problem. It means you're not using it against my minions, you're not using it against my Ring of Morrigan, etc. Mimicking their toolbox though feels really good. So I love this thing. It's a 2 of. I wouldn't run all 3. I've like played with running just 2, but you want to have multiple ways to interact with their carryable artifacts, and Mimic is a great one. Ruler of Thule is good in every deck. Come on now. It's basically, the other first S tier water card, I think. It's incredibly good because my dudes are fat and slow and I cast them to the back row. Rule of Thule lets them get into their back row, past their defensive sites. It buffs all my skeleton tokens. Like I played a game against Bruce just now where I Ruler of Thule with like 4 skeleton tokens and hit him for 8, 11 on that turn. Very good. I love Rule of Thule. I think you should always run him. Sacred Stag is busted. This is another reason that water is just so powerful. Having a 4 mana, 4 power with ward that says death right, you may ward this site is insane. These things are just so sticky. They're so hard to deal with. Water has sites and creatures that have incidental abilities to remove your opponent's minions. So their minions are dying without having to lose a card. And this card basically says you have to sacrifice 2 resources, possibly 2 cards, or a card in a creature, or a token in a card, etc., in order to deal with him, and that's nuts. Again, this is all just basically leveraging the most powerful cards in the game in one color, so I never have threshold issues, and Sacred Stag is insane. I have a very hard time not putting 2 of in every water deck because it's only 2 threshold and it's so powerful. Ward is very powerful, guys. You need to run some way to deal with Ward. Lacuna Entity, I love this card. 5 mana, 3 water threshold for a 4 power, Submerge, Voidwalk, and Genesis. Drag a weaker minion from an adjacent site to here, ignoring regions. This is good in general because this deck is what I would call creature control. I think I talked about creature control before, and this is my favorite type of deck to play. And you'll say like, wow, creature control, but you're only running 34 minions. Almost all of my minions have some sort of way to interact with your minions. They're either too beefy and sticky to deal with normally, or they're interacting with your minions to help remove those minions, like Lacuna Entity, the Coin Nixie, the Abaddon Succubus, the Green Knights, the Lord of Lies, etc. Right? They're all finding ways to deal with your minions on a body, so that the body means I can attack you and win the game with my mid-range creature strategy, and the control part means that I'm running something like 15 removal spells or something like that, plus defensive sites, plus creatures that are attacking you. I have more control elements than an average control deck, or at least on par with an average control deck, and I have more bodies than those control decks run. So this is what I would call creature control, and something like Lacuna Entity is perfect. It's a 4 power with evasion, being Voidwalk and Submerge, and it removes a minion. And the biggest thing for me to talk about here is that it banishes minions that go to the void, aka Rasputin. Rasputin is so goddamn strong right now in Corruptor. Outside of Corruptor, it's fine, and Corruptor, it's a 1 of 60. When you don't draw it, it's whatever. But Rasputin, being able to use your evil minions that have charge, so you'll like go in for your 2 mana, 3 power, it dies at the end of the turn, then Rasputin comes back in for 2 mana, and you end up getting hit for 8 that turn, is nuts. Drawing 3 cards off of a Grandmaster Wizard with Rasputin for 2 mana is nuts. Morgana is nuts. Sir Pelleas, etc. They're all insane. So being able to kill Rasputin and banish him so he's not allowed into the cemetery is invaluable. But outside of that niche interaction, it's still just a 5 mana, 4 power with evasion that's helping me remove minions, and I think that's very powerful. Lilith, I think is nuts. I know that there are the downsides of her missing. I know that the same kind of issue happened with Mother Nature. This is at the end of your turn, at the beginning of your turn, etc., etc. But I like it because the decks are so good now. Your magics and your artifacts are so powerful now that when happens is when Lilith at the end of turn either gets one of your minions, in which case she's now got a blocker, she's got an additional value. I've gotten 2 cards for 5 mana. I love it. Sometimes it gets insane minions. I've taken people's like Lords of Lies and Green Knights. That's wild. And then when sometimes it pulls your Omphalos off the top and puts it on the bottom, I'm like, great, I didn't want you to have that anyway. Or the Poison Nova, I'm like, great, I didn't want you to Poison Nova me anyway. It's a 5 mana, 3 power bottom their top spell isn't great. But the fact that it gets to stick around, it's a must-answer threat. I've already talked about how difficult it is to remove my minions and how important removing all of these things are because they're all must-answer threats. Lilith is just another one of them, and I love her. Mother Maiden Crones is basically the same thing. It's a 6-mana life swing. When she comes in, she gains you 3 life, and when she leaves, she deals 3 damage. And then for 3 mana, she can draw a spell. This deck wants to win with inevitability anyway. I don't always get to draw spells with her. Oftentimes, she gets removed immediately because she's a must-answer threat. But the fact of the matter is, if I untap with her, go to 6 mana, draw 2 spells off of her, and then keep going, I get to keep my 3/3 on board. I've drawn 2 extra cards. I'm already at 6 mana, which means I'm probably going to be able to double spell relatively soon. I'm sitting really pretty at that point. So I love this card. I think she's phenomenal. And it's weird that she's the only minion that I know that doesn't have a creature type, because you'll notice deity is lowercase d. Gnarled Wendigo and Dormant Monstrosity are what I built this deck around. When you get them late, they're fine. They're basically Amazon warriors with some discounts. And when you get them early, they feel broken. I mentioned to people that I'll oftentimes have 12 to 20 power on turn 4. And people are like, I don't understand how you do that. And it's really simple. Gnarled Wendigo, Dormant Monstrosity, Lugbog Cat, things like that are the reason why. Turn 1, make a skeleton. Turn 2, make a skeleton. Turn 3, if I have nothing else in hand besides a Gnarled Wendigo, it'll be make a skeleton, go to 2 mana, sacrifice 2 skeletons, and I will have 1 skeleton and 1 5/5 left over, and I'll spend that 2 mana. So you can get him as soon as turn 3 with just getting 1 sight per turn, 1 skeleton per turn, and you're left with 6 total power across 2 bodies on turn 3, which is pretty good. What's really nuts, though, is the turn 4 play, which is usually walk 3 skeletons to the right, play your Dormant Monstrosity for 1 mana, you're down to 3. Sacrifice all 3 skeletons for Gnarled Wendigo, you're down to 3 because this was free, and play a Lugbog Cat. That's a total of 15 power for 4 total mana on turn 3, spread across 3 different bodies, which are difficult to deal with. Things like Call to Sea are not going to work because that's 6 mana. Atlantean Fate's probably not going to work because that's 5 mana. This is on my turn 4. It's incredibly powerful. And again, many of those guys are out of position, which is why I like things like Polar Explorers and Ruler of Thule and Meat Hooks. But I've gotten all these bodies on the board. Every turn from now on, I'm playing a card that you have to deal with, and you've got these 3 bodies that are huge to deal with as well. Only one time did I have 2 Dormant Monstrosities in hand, and I had 20 plus power on turn 4, and that was nuts. But the point is, you can get these things cheated out with your skeleton tokens. Dormant Monstrosity also notably does count avatars, so you can get them for free if you have like an Undertow as your turn 4 site. You just pull your avatar to the side, make the skeleton token, and you've got loads of dudes. So yes, Wendigo and Dormant Monstrosity, I think if you're playing Water Necromancer, are auto-includes. They're phenomenal. Lord of Lies is cracked. We said it was like A+ tier versus S- tier, and it's definitely an S tier card. This is a 6 mana, 6 power, which is kind of difficult to do. Once on your turn, you may have 2 target units at a nearby location fight. If you advance to their side, then at some point you're probably going to use this as your death blow. You just make their defender attack their avatar and you win the game. If you have them attack you, you just play Lord of Lies down. He's 6 power. Odds are whatever minion is on your site is smaller than that. You can just say Lord of Lies is going to fight this minion here and remove it. So he's a 6 mana, 6 power removal threat. Very powerful. And then he's a must-answer threat, just like half of the other things in this deck, because he's just going to force your guys to fight. You can never stack minions, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. But anytime you put your minion on top of them, you're going to be able to hit them for a bunch of damage. And when Lord of Lies is on top of your enemy avatar, he hits you for 12 every turn. That's over very fast because he says, I'll attack you for 6, and then we're going to fight for 6, and then you're just dead. He's a must-answer threat. He's incredible. I love him. Green Knight, very similar. He's a 3 mana 7 power that forces a bunch of movement, which is incredibly powerful in this game. And he forces attacks, which is incredibly powerful in this game. You can defend the attacks against Green Knight. So if you have a skeleton underneath him and it's going to kill your Green Knight, just block the one dude and keep your Green Knight alive. He's like an S tier card from Arthurian Legends. I don't know why you wouldn't run him. And Dormant Monstrosity, we already talked about. There's a lot of movement in this deck, a lot of movement in this game, and a lot of ways to backdoor your enemies. Just getting your guys to the right so you can cast your Dormant Monstrosity always feels good. And if for whatever reason your opponent's moving to their corners and then still has a void in that location, you can cast your Dormant Monstrosity. The non-bow here is that it does not work with the Omphalos, because Omphalos says it must be cast at the Omphalos location, and Dormant Monstrosity says it must be cast to a corner void, and they don't cancel each other out. So you just have 2 forced cast locations. He can't meet both, so he can't be cast to either. He's just a dead card. It is what it is. I think it's still worth running. Plague of Frogs is amazing. Getting 7 pieces of cardboard for 1 mana is broken beyond belief. This is a mono water deck, so you're going to be able to do this on average on turn 3, sometimes even earlier. It is good for things like the Necrotic Manuscript. It's good for things like the Meat Hooks. It's good for chump blocking. It's good for the Dormant Monstrosities. It's good for the Gnarled Wendigos. It's just a good card. I would run this in any water deck that can abuse it, and this one certainly can. Polymorph is just a banish effect. This is replaceable with whatever your fill in your favorite removal effect is. Because this one's a banish effect, I find it powerful against things like Rasputin, and I think you do need to think about ways to deal with Rasputin. But there are other cards that are also powerful to get rid of, and I think Polymorph's a great way to do so. Does not work against the Doom of Dilmun, so once that thing comes out, you're basically dead. Riptide, again, we're doing a lot of force movement, and I kind of talked about how powerful some of these other effects are. For example, the Thin Ice and Troll Bridge. Riptide's just a great way to get rid of those things. It also can like pull your opponent's avatar or in for like a kill blow, death blow, and it can pull their minions closer to you, so you can start chains with things like Koinixi and with Abaddon Succubus, or just attacking them with your bigger minions, or moving your bigger minions forward, because again, a lot of these guys have to come in your back row. That sounds bad. A lot of these guys are summoned to the back row, and you need ways to move them around. Overflow I really like because I have high mana requirements, high threshold requirements, and this is a way to ramp on turn 3 into 4 mana. You have the leftover mana from your site that you just played off of Overflow, and so you can make a skeleton. So like turn 3, ramp an extra mana and make a skeleton feels really good in this deck. I only run 2 of them because it sucks when you draw it late, but it's still worth running. Swap I think is a mandatory 3 of. It's so valuable. Swapping their Ring of Morrigan is amazing. Swapping their trinkets pretty good, or sorry, their toolbox is pretty good. My slow guys like Dormant Monstrosity and Gnarled Wendigo and, you know, the Lord of Lies, etc. that I'm casting to my back row to protect. Swap just says like, hey, what's your defender doing? I'm gonna swap it on there. Or I'm gonna get my guy onto your back row and start hitting you fast. I'm gonna take your best artifact and start hitting you fast. I'm gonna take your Omphalos, which again, minions have to be cast to that location. Pulling their Omphalos onto your site means they can't cast them there unless they have some sort of ability that lets them be cast there, like the Saracen Raiders, but almost nothing else can be cast to your sites. So I love swapping my big minions onto their sites and putting their Omphalos onto my site. Yes, they can cast their magics from this, which means that maybe Poison Nova blows me out more, but just play around it. Swap is so good. I can't imagine a deck that I'm playing water in that I'm not running 3 of now. Symmetric Suffering is only a 1 of in this deck because Necromancer is so popular. Symmetric Suffering as Necromancer against anything that is not Necromancer is broken beyond belief, but because Necromancer is probably taking up like 30% of the field on average, it gets a lot worse. So I don't like it for that reason. It's basically sacrifice a minion, artifact, and aura, and your opponent has to sacrifice the same. The key here is always to sacrifice your token for whatever their minion is. Even if it has ward, it does get around that. Even if it's the Doom of Dilmun, it does get around that. So it's a very powerful effect, but because other people are also playing tokens, because it's a broken thing to be doing, that's why I only run 1 of them. If it turns out nobody else wants to play Necromancer, then I would run the play set of these. They're so good. Also, because I have things like Meat Hook, I can Meat Hook you into my side. I no longer need it, and now it's a threat that if you kill my minion, you might get access to my artifact. I love just being like, cool, I'll sacrifice my Meat Hook, and you get to sacrifice your Ring of Morrigan or your Omphalos or something like that. Very powerful. Into the Abyss, I run a 1 of. I like this card, but again, mostly because it can pull you into the void. As the void gets smaller, as the game goes later, this is less effective. It's still good because it's like a drown, but it's really the void banishment that I really enjoy. So I like it. Mesmerism is broken, it's S tier, and it can break the game in half. Just being able to steer your opponent's minion, and because it came in the turn before, it usually has charge. It doesn't tap it like Infiltrate does. It's broken. And I'm mono water. I hit 4 threshold every game. Shapeshift because I have tokens, just the same way I ran them in Arthurian Legends. I'm running now in Gothic. I just have, instead of tawnies, I got skeleton tokens. I love this card. And a lot of my dudes are big and fat. Getting a Dormant Monstrosity out for 4 mana feels good, especially when I don't have to play it in the back row. And then it has like pseudo charge. Call of the Sea is just like Earthquake and Poison Nova. It's totally broken. It's so very valuable to have. And it gets around ward because it doesn't target any units. It targets the site. And once they're submerged, the ward will break and then they'll die anyway. So I love this card. Sites. Okay, so this should be pretty quick. Babbling Brook, we all know, is broken. It's a way to get rid of it stalls, which is good. It's a way to get rid of stealth. So if they infiltrate your minions, I think this is an incredibly important thing to have, is ways to deal with infiltrate. If they infiltrate my minions and I play Babbling Brook, I get rid of them. If they have an I know on me and I play Babbling Brook, I get to get rid of their stealth, finally target them and remove them. You can remove their failed mutations with Babbling Brook, etc. I think it's a very valuable card to have. Towers, I'm running, you'll note that none of my spells are air, but my sideboard is. I run 1 of every tower because I like to be able to ramp my minions out. And then, yeah, I just think it's totally worth having. These things are that broken. Again, I think that the water has a hard time ending the game, but having some of these cards in my sideboard that are air lets me end the game a little bit easier. So I think it's worth running some air sites. I just don't run enough air sites to feel comfortable running them in the main board. Elder Ruins is a card I was pretty high on that I'm a little bit lower on now because cards are so good. Pretty much anything I'm drawing, I'd rather spend my mana on than Elder Ruins. It works out really well if all I draw is like a Gothic manuscript for turn. I can play that and use my Shogoth ability. But on average, I'm not casting Shogoths almost in any game. They're just very slow. This will probably be the next site that comes out, especially if you want to run some air sites. But yeah, I think it's still pretty valuable. Sometimes you get a Shogoth out of it for free. You meet hook them to your back row, you murderize them. It's still good. It's just that your cards are so good, you're spending your mana on those instead. Garden of Eden, despite the fact that I've got multiple ways to draw more than one card per turn, I think is definitely worth running. It just turns off the interrogator. You say, yeah, you hit me, draw a card, and then they can't draw a card. So they don't get to draw any cards. It turns off their avatar entirely. Same thing with Sorcerer. It just turns into a vanilla avatar. I think it's so powerful. People who are running Grandmaster Wizards, that Corruptor deck I was talking about that just draws so many cards, just mono water minions are all kind of broken. And so if we're going to play a fair game where we each draw one card per turn, I'm probably happier in that situation. And so that's why I like Garden of Eden. Plus, you get to like play it when you want to, right? If you have a Gothic manuscript in hand, maybe you make 3 skeletons for the first 3 turns. On turn 4, you draw 3 extra cards, play your Garden of Eden. And you say, great, I've got 3 additional cards to beat you with that I think on average my cards are worth more than yours. They draw their Grandmaster Wizard and it's worthless. I don't know if you guys realize this because it's like kind of deep hidden text. I wonder if it says it on here. It does not have the FAQ here. So players can't draw more than 1 card per turn is the Garden of Eden text. But importantly, when Morgana draws, it counts as the player. And same thing with Dank Omphalos. Even though they're going to a separate hand that only those units can cast, it does count as the player drawing additional cards. So this does hose Morgana and it hoses the Omphalos. So yes, this is a little bit of a non-bow, but I still think it's worth running because it just turns their deck off, whereas I still get skeletons every turn. Gilman House is busted because you can transform minions into horrible hybrids from your collection. I run 3 of them. I can just turn 3 skeletons into 3 horrible hybrids for free. It just costs 4 water threshold. You can do them all in one turn. It's not once per turn. And you can target their minions, which is like a niche application. If they've got something incredibly powerful, like a Green Knight, you just turn it into a 3/3. It's still theirs, but it's pretty powerful. Gothic Tower, we know why. Lighthouse is just so I can cast those other spells from my collection. Tower, Mismanaged Mortuary. This is technically a water site, but technically not. So it's flooded. Anything that is flooded provides water threshold, so it's a water site. It will not be underwater, though, in Curiosa, and the reason for that is technically it's not a water site while it's in your hand. The only reason that's really important is A, if you silence it, like things like Acid Rain, it is no longer a water site for your threshold, and B, for Overflow. Overflow says you have to play a water site from your hand. Technically, this isn't a water site until it comes into this, to the battlefield. So why am I playing this risky site? It's because you treat your opponent's cemetery as yours and vice versa, which means Archimago, Flamecaller, Death Speaker, etc. only have access to your, well, I guess Death Speaker doesn't because they can access both cemeteries either way. But Archimago and Flamecaller and things like that that want to access their cemetery, they only get access to your cemetery. This is just a vanilla water site in my deck that says Archimago, good luck winning with my creatures or a couple of my spells, of which I've probably not cast 3. I absolutely love it. I think it's totally worth running in every water deck because it just turns off Archimago if you draw it, and that's an incredibly powerful thing to do. So does, honestly, Garden of Eden. It's, again, I run a lot of Archimago hate because the guys I play with are very good at Archimago. Mirror's Trophy Room is really good. If this can just, it's basically City of Glass or City of Souls or City of Traders without the downside. This is a vanilla site, thresholdless site that provides 1 mana at base. The downside is that it might only provide 1 mana and it does not provide threshold. That's not a bad card as far as downside goes. And then the upside is it provides 2 mana or 3 mana or 4 mana or 5 mana. I've definitely had this thing producing 3 mana before. I've never gotten to 4. It's rare that your opponents are not going to play unique minions, but some don't. And then if you get Mismanaged Mortuary and then your Ino dies, you count their cemetery as yours and vice versa. So my dead Ino counts towards my Mirror's Trophy Room, and then I get to start drawing cards again. So I like this a lot. Or sorry, not drawing cards, producing extra mana. I like it a lot. I think it's totally worth it. River Rapids is like the only difference between Blue Magic and Blue Magic 2. And that's because River Rapids, I didn't realize, says once in your turn, you may push a minion on connected rivers 1 step. If you have no other rivers, you just have River Rapids, you can just push the minion once per turn adjacent, which is incredibly powerful. This is the opposite of what Koinixie says. This is 1 step. That's the unit of measurement, meaning even if it has airborne, it's adjacent because you're pushing it the unit of measurement of a step. Whereas Koinixie says forces them to take a step. That means you can use movement abilities. This is so good when you have troll bridges and when you have thin ice, because you just get to play your, thin ice as turn 2. Turn 3, you're playing your river rapids, and then if you have a turn 4 troll bridge or another thin ice, you're like, any site you attack on my front row, I'm pushing you into a thin ice and you're gonna die. It's so good. I love river rapids. It's very powerful, and you don't need extra rivers to make it work. If you have extra rivers, great, and it works against them too, because if they play like their River of Flame, that's a river. So yes, I love this card. It's very powerful. Temple of Malak, we already talked about. It's at least +1 mana per turn. It can be +2 mana if you'd like. Yes, it's a fire threshold site, so it doesn't really work as far as threshold goes, but it's totally worth it when you're running mono water. Thin Ice is broken, and the art's great. We love Druid, so hell yeah, Druid. I don't know. I've already said kind of everything about this card. It's phenomenal. Tintagel, it's a water air site. That's about it. I might actually think about replacing this with Joyous Guard. The only reason being, when I get access to their cemetery, I might want... it is technically possible that I'll have both a Joyous Guard out and a Temple of Malak out, and then I get their Rasputin. That's like the only reason to do it, but there's technically no reason that Tintagel is better than Joyous Guard. I really like the art for this one, which is why I included it instead. But theoretically, in less than 1% of games, I may actually have more of an advantage from playing Joyous Guard, so I think we should probably switch it for Joyous Guard. Troll Bridge, just great. It's defensive site. We've got Coin Nixies, we've got Abaddon Succubi, we've got tokens to stack the 3 damage plus 1 token, makes it 4 damage, is totally worth running. Undertow is just free movement. We think free movement is broken. And Watchtower is a way to deal with Infiltrate and deal with Frozen Horror, Asmodeus, Ino, etc. So I run these because I have the room in my deck to do so. And this is why I don't like running a different color other than air. And why, let's see, I have 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. So I run 9 air sites. It might be worth running Grapple Shot in the main board, but it's a little bit risky because I want to hit 3 water threshold and I want to hit 4 water thresholds. So I really need to be able to hit those thresholds. And if I can't hit them on curve, it's putting me a little bit behind. And I don't draw that many cards. So that's why I've chosen to go mono water. I do think the deck has a higher upside as water air with a lower floor. Collection is pretty easy. Zap just wins the game on the spot when they're on death's door. Disenchant deals with the things that you need to disenchant. I run Swap and Mimic in my main board, but Disenchant's also very powerful because it can get rid of their spells for their Omphalos, whereas Swap and Mimic, neither one of them deal with it. Mimic has to be a carryable artifact, and those things are monuments. So Disenchant sometimes you just need. It's also very good against the auras that are going to screw you. Riptide, you'll note I already have some in the main deck, but it's just such a valuable card. It's a cantrip that draws a card, and in my deck I want to move you around, so it's worth having access to an extra one. Drown is cracked when you need it and bad when you don't, so that's why I put it in the sideboard. Grapple Shot, again, it's totally worth running. I just don't always have the threshold, so that's why I put it in the sideboard. 3 horrible hybrids are for the Gilman house primarily. I got rid of the Peculiar Ports, I believe, in this version of the deck. Murder of Crows, it's hard to get the double threshold. Sometimes I have 4 air threshold. I'm like, why don't I run this in the main board? But oftentimes I will only have 1 air threshold and I'll be like, thank God I don't run this in the main board. It's a very powerful spell. It deals with Necromancer, it deals with Ward, and it allows you to trade up. So I like this a lot, and you can cast it again from your cemetery, but I put it in the sideboard because of threshold issues. And then I have 1 Shogoth for those Elder Ruins. Again, I'm not as sold on this as I used to be, but I think it's very powerful. Whew, that was a lot. So this is the deck, Blue Magic 2. The other one is the one that's public, and I'll probably post the this version because it's as soon as the Tournament of Champions is over, I'll add the River Rapids, and then this will be the only version that matters, is the main Blue Magic. But yeah, I think that this deck is so powerful, it's warping the meta. I think if you're not planning on playing against a bunch of water decks, you're not planning appropriately for tournaments, at least not for competitive. And again, it was absolutely crushing like everyone I played against until people started building around it. And even then, the decks that are built around to beat this still don't always. Because even running Drought and Boil and Rest in Peace is not enough to win because you're only going to draw so many of those cards each game. And I'm going to get insane value out of this every time. So if you want to be a jerk and bully people, this is a great deck to run with. And if not, then try to think about things like this when you're building your decks so that you can beat it if you run into it at a tournament or a locals event. Yeah, I think that's it. I just recorded the air tier list with Bruce, so that'll be coming up a little bit later this week or next week. And yeah, I'm back, guys. So like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.